I believe that the American dream is achievable. It is always adapting to reality and evolves over time to be achievable. How does one define the American dream? How is it seen? That can change so much depending on where and when you look. The definition of the American dream from the Merriam-Webster dictionary is a happy way of living that is thought of by many Americans as something that can be achieved by anyone in the US, especially by working hard and becoming successful. With good jobs, a nice house, 2 children, and plenty of money, they believe they were living the American dream. However, the dream evolves, its definition ever changing, with the ideas expressed in the Merriam-Webster dictionary just being broadly shared characteristics. For the post-World War II American in the 1940s and 50s, the American dream is a white picket fence and a nuclear family. For the black families, their dreams would include being seen and heard, the end of racial segregation, and no more being oppressed. The past shows us the differences between every American dream. There are so many stories, parts of history cataloged by the people who witnessed it or heard of it. Romantics like Henry David Thoreau, the fireside poet. Those from the Age of Reason like Frederick Douglass. Realists like Ambrose Bierce and Kate Chopin. And modernists like F. Scott Fitzgerald all give their own snapshots of the American dream, whether they meant to or not. These snapshots in time show us how the dream adapts to the people and the times. As I said before, the white picket fence and a family are one of the older iterations of the American dream. It, or at least a version of it, is demonstrated in Owl Creek Bridge by Ambrose Bierce, a story about a farmer in the South working hard to protect his home and family. He has a beautiful farm with a small fence and a family who he loves. He tries to slow down the Northern Army, getting himself killed in the process. He does not care for the danger, only his family. Now, the dream stayed in that iteration for a long time. A family and kids which you were a part of and cared for more than yourself. If you were a man, you had a job you did to support them without any deep consideration for the dangers of work. Be it black lung from a coal mine, farming accidents, a calcified heart from making paper, or dying on a railroad, you worked to get the money you needed to support the home. If you were a woman, your success depended on getting married, having children, and being the matron of the home without any consideration for your desires, career, or independence. The narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, we can see the history of the American black man, which is the foundation of how the quest for racial equality is an important aspect of the ever-evolving dream. He asked me if I meant to persist in my resistance. I told him I did. Come what might, that he had used me like a brute for 6 months, and that I was determined to be used so no longer. With that, he strove to drag me to a stick that was lying out of the stable door. He meant to knock me down. Douglass fought against the one who had oppressed him, seeking to gain better treatment and freedom from his oppression. He did not want to be knocked down. That was his dream. This parallels what happened in the 1960s and 70s. In the 60s and 70s, the next adaptation of the American dream encompassed new ideas, such as racial equality and careers for women. New amendments were passed to protect the rights of African Americans, and court cases were held in order to fight against those who oppressed or would harm the black population. Women sought equality in careers. They no longer wanted to define themselves through their roles as matrons who were in charge of tending to the family. This adaptation can be seen paralleled by a pair of silk stockings by Kate Chopin. In that story, you see a woman who is out shopping. She thinks only of her family and does not think about herself. She eventually rests and notices something that she wants. She reaches for it and realizes how she has neglected herself and her wants her whole life. She takes her own money and buys things for herself, looking to take care of herself and get her own happiness. This illustrates the 1970s shift in values as women sought to gain their own careers and lives outside of their families. There's a document dubbed the Women's Bill of Rights, the Convention of the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. CEDAW. It is the most comprehensive international instrument to protect the human rights of women, and is the second most ratified UN human rights treaty after the Convention on the Rights of the Child, with ratifications from 189 nations. It was adopted in 1979. Through all of this, through time and space, through the first colonies coming together to make the beginnings of our country, to the modern day where new challenges rear their head, the dream has continuously evolved. Now in the 2020s, many modern millennials see the dream differently. Our dream is a life that we can live happily, surrounded by our friends, free from debt, with affordable living, healthcare, and autonomy. This new dream is almost the opposite of what has been seen so far. It is far less family focused. It is not a fight for safe working conditions or racial integration like the 40s and 50s. It is not a fight for career freedom and education like it is in the 1970s. It is about personal growth and opportunities, freedom from debt and affordable housing, and living which does not specifically mean home ownership. But new challenges have arisen, evolving with the dream. The fight for careers is no longer that they only belong to a few men, but there are too many qualified people for jobs, and requirements have gone up. The fight is not that education is for the few, but is now too expensive for the many. Homes cost money, travel costs money, education costs money, and one requires the other. But these challenges are just part of the dream, which has always been a fight. Whether it be in court to change the legislation oppressing the minorities, protests to gain the right to equal treatment, working your hardest to get into a school that was white or men only, finding the job you want, or even just paying your way in the world, it has always been a fight. This fight for the lives that we want, that is the core of the American dream. We, the American people, fight against the world, against the system, against the people who would see us brought down, all so that we may gain the lives we seek. The fight for every right, for every school, for every job, for every bit of land. That is what the dream centers around. The ever-evolving dream, the ever-changing desires, the ideals that we hold close are all parts of the American dream. Even though those ideals might not be from the same generation, even though those ideas might not be the same for each generation as they were for their grandparents, the American dream is as achievable today as it was 200 years ago. It is difficult. It is surrounded by the ever-evolving challenges that the world comes with, and time again, they have been overcome in order to create the world that we want, the lives that we want, and the dream that we seek. The American dream is achievable. It has evolved and adapted to the time in which we live, becoming new and encompassing new values, finding new challenges and roadblocks, but it is still our dream. And that dream is still achievable.